Good morning everyone. I'm Salina and today I'll be presenting about palatal procedures of obstructive sleep apnea. But before that, I'll share a little bit about my elective module in which I did back in Malaysia. The first 3 weeks I did in the otorhinolaryngology department and the last 3 weeks I did in the dermatology department. This is me in front of the main building. So in ORL department, I saw a lot of procedures done in the procedure room here. Some of them are examination of ear under the microscope and also flexible scope. And this was the last day of the elective, and these are the specialists and residents. As for the dermatology department, every Wednesday we went to different district hospitals in which we get to see patients in the outskirts. So this is me in front of all the 3 district hospitals. And this was the last day, and that's the head of department with specialists, other nurses, and also other students from other universities. Now proceeding to the main objective for today, I'll talk briefly about OSA, obstructive sleep apnea, and also the main topic, which is the palatal procedure for obstructive sleep apnea. So, what is OSA? It is a sleep disorder that involves the cessation or a significant decrease in the airflow in the presence of breathing effort for at least 10 seconds. And this is how it happens. So, our patient has a small airway, and then he will have a neuromuscular compensation. But then when the patient falls to sleep, there will be loss of this muscle activity, and there will be no neuromuscular compensation, leading to airway collapses, apnea, hypoxia and hypercapnia, and then the patient will have increased ventilatory effort, leading to the patient aroused from sleep, and pharyngeal muscle activity destroyed, the airway will open, hyperventilation again, and then the patient sleeps. So the vicious cycle will just continue on and on. As for the etiology, we have 2 categories. First, the structural factors, and then we have the non-structural factors. Some of them are craniofacial bony anatomy, which can be mandibular hypoplasia or high arch palate in women. We also have nasal obstruction, which can be from polyps and septal deviation, retropalatal obstruction, like abnormal palate and uvula, and also adenotonsillar hypertrophy in children. Lastly, we have the retroglossal obstruction, which could be large, malformed, and also tumor. For the non-structural factors, it could be from obesity, smoking, and sedative use. As for clinical picture, we can divide into 2. First is the daytime symptoms. First is the nocturnal symptoms. It could be snoring, gasping and choking, and also if the spouse witness any apnea occur in the patient. And then we have the daytime symptom, which could be excessive daytime sleepiness, cognitive deficit, and daytime fatigue. Moving on to the management. For investigation, there's no recorded lab studies, but there's one clinical trial revealed that cysteine might be the potential biomarker, and we can do imaging to identify the site of obstruction. And lastly, we can do polysomnography, in which it will accurately diagnose OSA. And then for treatment, we can divide into general and behavioral measures, also mechanical measures, and lastly surgical modalities, which is the main topic for today. So moving on, but before we move to the surgical modalities, we have the non-surgical modalities that I mentioned before. We have the CPAP, continuous positive airway pressure, the BiPAP, bilevel positive airway pressure, OA, the oral appliances, and lastly mandibular advancement devices. So for the surgical modalities, what are the indications and the contraindications for them? For the indications, it could be the apnea-hypopnea index more than 20 events per hour of sleep, or failure of medical management. For the contraindication, it could be severe pulmonary disease and also morbid obesity and etc. So how we determine the site of obstruction? We have 3 ways. Which are, the first one is the Muller's maneuver with flexible fiber optic scope, in which we'll introduce the scope inside the hypopharynx of the patient, and then if there's airway collapse, then it means it is positive test, which means that the obstruction is below the soft palate. The second way is the modified myelopathy score, in which we ask the patient to protrude their tongue as much as possible, and then it will be divided into class 1 to class 4 myelopathy score. Class 1 meaning that we can see the soft palate. Well, class 4 we cannot see the soft palate at all. And the last way is we have the Friedman staging, in which we will assess 3 factors. The first one is the palatine tonsils, combined with the modified Malapati score, and lastly, the BMI. So patients with lower Friedman staging will benefit more after the uvulopalatal-pharyngoplasty. So this is the staging of Friedman. So the palatal procedures, we have 10 of them. The first one is the uvulopalatal-pharyngoplasty. It is the first procedure done for OSA. It is introduced by Dr. Ikematsu from Japan in 1964, and the aim is to alleviate isolated retropalatal obstruction. But however, it shows that UPPP has a high failure rate of 61%, hence leading to new emerging surgical modalities nowadays. So this is the normal throat, as you can see. This is how it appears after the surgery. You can see there's the tonsils are removed and the uvula also removed. The second surgical technique is the uvulopalatal flap, in which it was introduced in 1996, and the aim is to reduce the risk of bilopharyngeal insufficiency and stenosis by using a reversible flap. So, and it has less post-operative pain to traditional UPPP. So, okay, this is the normal throat. And after the UPF, you can see there's a bulge here. The tonsils are already removed, and the uvula is placed at the soft palate. And if there's any complication, we can just reverse back the flap. The third surgical modality is the TCRF, temperature control radiofrequency of the palate. It is done back in 2000, and the aim is to hit the soft tissue and cause a slight damage to the soft palate, leading to rigidity of the soft palate. And it also has less of post-operative pain with limited submucosal tissue injury. And this is how they do it. They insert the probe inside the soft palate and then induce heat to the surrounding tissue. The fourth one is the pillar palatal implant system. And it is introduced by Restore Medical Incorporated in 2003. It is done to reduce palatal flutter and snoring by stiffening the soft palate. And the material they use is the polyethylene terephthalate. The material itself, when embedded in the soft palate, will induce chronic inflammatory response and then leading to fibrosis and leads to rigidity of the soft palate. So this is how it appears when the procedure is done. And this is after the procedure, in which the implants are embedded in the soft palate. The fifth one is the laser-assisted uvulopalatoplasty. It is introduced back in 1980s, and the aim is to shorten and stiffen the soft palate via a series of carbon dioxide laser incisions. But then, American Academy of Sleep Medicine has released evidence-based review that they did not recommend this surgical technique because it will induce significant complications post-operatively. And this is how the procedure is done. The sixth one is the expansion sphincter pharyngoplasty, ESP. It is introduced in 2007, and the aim is to increase the size of the airway without interrupting the normal functions such as breathing, swallowing, and speaking. And based on a study, based on a randomized control trial, it shows that RCT, it shows that ESP has a high percentage, 78%, compared to the traditional UPPP. So this is one of the steps of the procedure. And this is how it appears post-operatively. For the seventh one, lateral pharyngoplasty, it is done back in 2003, and the aim is the same as ESP, to increase the size of the airway without interrupting the normal functions. But then, compared to ESP, it requires more dissection, hence to more difficulty for the surgeon and a slightly longer recovery time. So this is the normal throat, and this is how it appears after lateral pharyngoplasty. For the eighth is palatal advancement pharyngoplasty. It is introduced back in 1993, and there is no soft tissue excision. It's just palatal advancement with additional of removal of the hard palate. So this is, as you can see here, it says that the hard palate already removed. They done osteotomy to the hard palate, and then leading to opening of the airway, they just advance the soft palate. The ninth is Z-palatoplasty, in which it was introduced by Dr. Frollo in 1978, but it was done actually done for the cleft palate repair, but they applied the same idea in OSA treatment. So the aim is to change the scar contraction from anterior transverse, from anterior medial pull, which is done in the UPPP, to anterior transverse. So, but then it tends to be associated with dysphagia more after surgery. This is the steps of the surgery, in which they cut in the middle, and then these two triangles are stood forward and together to perform the Z shape of the contraction scar. And lastly, we have the relocation pharyngeoplasty. It was introduced by Dr. Lee in 2012, and it is done to open the space for breathing in a slightly different way, in a manner that they sew together the muscles at the back of the throat, the palatopharyngeus muscle and also the superior constrictor muscle. But it is a multi-level surgical technique, hence we need more experienced surgeon to perform the procedure. This is one of the steps, and this is how it appears post-operatively. We can see that the soft palate is more short, and then the airway is much bigger. And my take-home message: OSA, obstructive sleep apnea, is characterized by recurrent episode of upper airway collapse during sleep, and we should know that it is not a minor condition because it can lead to a life-threatening problem. And CPAP, continuous positive airway pressure, remains the gold standard treatment for OSA unless surgery is indicated, and there is no definite surgery because every patient has a different anatomy. And lastly, new surgical modalities emerging by time in order to provide high cure rate and better improvement for the patient. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.